Welcome back to another episode of Holy Shift, episode 7. Adrienne, how are you today?
Oh, I was so good because I'm sitting down and talking with you. It's literally the highlight of my week.
That's a loaded question after the Taurus full moon, too, right?
Uh, yeah. Welcome to Holy Shift, the podcast where medicine meets mystery and healing becomes whole.
We're your hosts, Taylor Sappington
and Adrienne Irizarry.
Two clinicians, herbalists, and mystics who believe the old ways and modern medicine were never meant to live apart.
This is a space for the witches in the broom closet, the healers afraid to leave their mark, the world walkers who know they don't fit into the systems they were handed.
Here we go first, sharing our stories, our medicine, and the truth about what it really takes to reclaim your power, your health, and your place in the world.
Because the safest, most radical thing you can be is yourself.
This is your permission.
This is your portal.
This is your Holy Shift. It is the Friday after the Taurus full moon. We are almost 48 hours out from the full moon hitting its peak point. And that full moon was one of dissolution and letting things go and dismembering. That sounds awful. Dissembling. Dissembling. Is that a word? Am I making a word up?
Disassembling?
Yeah, there we go. We're like a few days out from my period. The marbles are starting to enter the chat too. So disassembling certain beliefs, behaviors. I mean, it was a big one for a lot of people.
It was a rude one. I actually thought that we had already hit the full moon and then found out that it was actually supposed to be the next day. And I went,
It was called the beaver full moon too, which I don't ever recall it being called the beaver full moon. I'm like, this is a really funny thing to write as I'm writing about this full moon. Like its name was the beaver full moon. Like I read like blood full moon, you know what I mean? Like blue moon, beaver.
But well, there's beaver, there's sturgeon, there's a whole bunch of them.
We're kind of just, what? Who decided this was going to be called the beaver full moon?
I was gonna say, maybe this is something we should research and do an episode on.
No,
because...
Sorry, guys. Now I'm in left field, La La Land.
But I think the etymology, the origin story of stuff like that is kind of interesting.
Like the mythology of I say mythology with quotes. We call it mythology in the Western world, fine. But like the mythology even of all of the zodiac signs, like the stories are gorgeous. And when you understand the mythological story, set in quotation marks, like the whole personality of the sign comes to life in a completely different way.
Oh, absolutely. And I say that through the lens of doing acutonics because there are fork frequencies that correspond with all of those celestial bodies. So part of the training is the mythology around that frequency, that planet, and like looking at the names in Greek mythology and Roman mythology and like how else could this have shown up in other cultures? So sometimes it's, oh, this was also known as, and I think it's fascinating because when I do acutonics, I tell the body a story. Can you do it from a clinical headspace? Sure. But
What fun is that?
Right? We walk through this world with the stories that we carry, right? And so like if you have friction or some sort of mother wound or father wound, I can then look to these forks and go, oh, these frequencies are going to fill the role of mother or father or grandfather, etc. And I can help with the use of Chiron, the wounded healer, to help create healing around this topic, right? And so I love the mythology. And it's so funny. I look back at high school and my world mythology class was one of the smallest like English classes. And I loved every stinking second of it. I read that book cover to cover. I was probably the most engaged in that class of all of my English classes. And I liked English, don't get me wrong, but like there was something about it that spoke to me.
Yeah.
And then to look at where I am now and the fact that I am actually like completely immersed in this mythology and how it speaks and works through my work, my life, I'm like, wow, it's just funny how the body knows.
Yeah, absolutely. It, like you said, it tells a beautiful, full, well-rounded, multifaceted story that I think is missing. And my kid is into mythology. I love that my kid is into mythology. So I can talk to him about astrology through mythology. And he can track with me on like through the gods and the goddesses. And I'm like, this is so cool. I'm talking to him about what I do, but I'm doing it in the context that he understands, which is the quote unquote mythology. So
I love the Percy Jackson series for that
yes.
reason. And it was funny because those books were just starting to come out as I was going through some of my training. And my daughter was like just devouring these books. Son was devouring those books too. Like one would finish it and then hand the book off to the other one.
Yeah.
And I loved that they had that common ground to speak from, but then they understood at a different level what it was that I was doing. And my daughter actually plopped herself down on the floor during one of my training sessions where we were actually covering the mythology of, it was my SZN class, and we were talking about SZN. And my daughter vividly remembers all kinds of things about SZN because there were 3 versions of the way that the story was told. And she can rattle them all off and everything. I mean, she was little at the time. So it's so neat how that kind of storytelling just, I mean, we used to disseminate our history through storytelling, like,
and our traditions.
Yeah.
And we passed down.
It's all rooted in this. Your body tells a story. We oral history this stuff until we started writing things down. And then the written word ended up being done through the lens of whoever could do the writing. So if you couldn't write, then you weren't in the longevity record unless you were passing these stories down orally and somebody captured it. So I don't know. I think it's incredible how these kinds of stories, and especially in a time where we're more divided than ever, we still have all of the same tenets of what it is to be human, believing in something bigger than we are, and understanding that there is a mythology, a mythos around our lived experience. And whether somebody puts a religious label on it or not, it's literally mythology.
Yeah. I mean, that's a soapbox I'm going to save for another podcast, because if you're sitting here talking about it, I'm like, we could poke at the religion thing, because whether we want to acknowledge it or not, Yeshua, a label, Jesus, a label, Buddha, a label, but it all comes back to representing the same thing, which is a consciousness that exists within all of us. But another story Adrienne and I really want to squash, put to bed, is the story around the different rites of passage in the United States that have been pathologized, that have been medicalized, and that, I'm going to say, not every woman, but the majority of women are going to cross or go through at some point in their life. So I think this is a familiar thread for most of us, right? Like, you've been told that you're falling apart, that you're hormonal, that you're unstable, that you're overreacting. I imagine any one of you that's listening has woken up at 3 a.m., heart racing, snapped at somebody who didn't deserve it. Pardon me. You can't remember the word for that thing. Have you been there, Adrienne? Like, that thing, that thing. You can see it in your mind's eye, but you can't get it out of your mouth. Your body feels heavier. Your brain feels foggier. Your will to pretend thins. And as all of this is going on, you quietly wonder, is this just who I am now? Am I broken? Is my power to live normally, and I say that in quotation marks, slipping away? I think what we get to bring light to or shed light on is the fact that there are multiple rites of passage that occur in a woman's life that have been capitalized upon by Western medical society.
Yes. We have a lot of benchmarks that are like that. And let's also run all of this information through the filter of we are not little men. And the way that our bodies have been studied, or lack thereof, has been run through the filter of men, and that we're just smaller men.
Medication administration, lab ranges, labs that you run, understanding fertility, like
they didn't even start using actual blood to measure whether menstrual pads could absorb things properly until like late in the 2000s.
Interesting too. I just saw a real side note where the maxi pads that are sold, which the fact that women have to purchase products for something that occurs every single month, and the products that they have to purchase in order to ensure that they can continue to participate in society like they're a man, as if they're not bleeding, as if all the energy is not draining from every part of their body and exiting stage left out of their vagina for several days. Okay. But I just saw content on maxi pads containing microbial growth and mold.
Yes.
And not being able to see it until you hold it up to the light. That's terrifying to think about what that's coming into contact with.
Oh, yeah. Some of the most porous cells in your entire body. Yeah, it is terrifying.
And we wonder why periods are so uncomfortable for so many women. Obviously, that's a multifaceted conversation, but let's just start with your first bleed. I'm sure everyone remembers their first bleed. I will never forget my first bleed. And what should have been a ceremony of awakening literally became a whisper in the hallway and a box of tampons. I was 9 when I had my first bleed. And I'll never forget that I was like, I think I was in 6th grade, 5th grade, something like that, somewhere, maybe. And I went to school and would hide my pads up the inside of my sleeve because I was so embarrassed.
I did that up until a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like, because we have this narrative around being a bleeding body. So one of my COVID projects was becoming a sacred menarche mentor. Yeah. Because we've lost all of the ceremony and ritual around that first bleed literally being a rite of passage, and that stepping over the threshold from being a child to being in childbearing years. Whether, you know, you're old enough or mentally able enough to take care of a child, that doesn't matter. Every culture around the world has had some level of ceremony or recognition around that becoming a woman aspect of things. And here in Western culture predominantly, but definitely here in the United States, like I'm seeing a shift in the Gen Z crowd around there being more open conversation around periods, but I'm talking like late Gen Z. So, because like I have Gen Z, Gen Alpha in my house, so late Gen Z, I would say the kids that are currently at the time of this recording, like 15, 16, 14, 15, 16, like in that zone, I feel like they're significantly more comfortable talking about periods. And like, even when they come into my office and they're like, oh, well, I have cramps and I have this and I have that. And like, they just openly talk about that in front of their parents. And like, even 5 years prior to that, I wasn't seeing that kind of comfort. There was a lot of like discomfort around the body. There's actually an interesting study that shows that like the self-confidence of girls and boys tracks along at pretty close to the same trajectory until you get to the menstruating years. And then girls starts to go down and boys continues to increase. And it's because there's been this stigma, verbalized or socialized, it doesn't really matter, around when you become a bleeding body, there's something gross about you, or there's something wrong about you, or fill in the blank there. So there's a lot of people who bleed in silence. I mean, I worked with a woman many years ago now who there was a lot unhealthy happening in the relationship she was in, but this particular statement really stuck out to me, that she would empty the trash can and she would hide her pads because he didn't want any knowledge that she was ever on a period.
How are you supposed to hide that? I mean, I look at my experience and I'm like, I don't know how I would be able to hide that. Everything about who I am changes in ways that I would anticipate them to change.
Well, and I look at like the health of her cycle when she came to me, because she was bleeding all the time and she wasn't having a really distinct, here's my period, here's ovulation. Like she would bleed and then it would stop for a few days and then she would bleed again and she would stop for a few days. So she was having breakthrough bleeding. And I know some of you listening to this is, oh, that's not a period. No, that is definitely not a period. And she was like, just tired of bleeding all the time, and the fact that she couldn't travel, she couldn't go anywhere, she couldn't do anything because she never knew when it was going to start and when it was going to stop. And her body had internalized that message so hard that it was like the dam broke in order for the pressure to be released. Like walking on eggshells like that to hide the was really hard for her.
Understandably so.
Yeah, and then started to manifest itself as physical symptoms. So it all starts with this frame that we create around your first period. So like when one of my kids started her period, she was like, don't make a big deal about it. I'm really uncomfortable about it. I gave her like a couple of little things. And I was like, I want you to know that this is a special thing. And here's this new way of moving through the world, taking care of your body. Blah, blah, welcome to the club kind of thing. Right. But she did not want any sort of like ritual ceremony. She didn't want to make a big deal out of it. My younger one has not had her first period yet and is already planning a little gathering of having her friends and making it a thing. And I love that. I love that she is that comfortable in her body, that she wants to do that kind of thing. But really, it's the reverence and the honoring of the sacredness of this shift, this fundamental shift in your energy and how your body is functioning.
Yeah, well, in addition to what you mentioned too, indigenous cultures, ancient cultures, with a girl's first period, honoring it through ritual, as you mentioned, honoring it through initiation, they took her out of daily life. They removed her from daily life and they taught her the magic of her cycle, the rhythm of her energy, and the sacred role her body plays in creation. And in the West, to your point, we've been told that the period is dirty. We've been taught to hide the blood. We've been taught to silence the symptoms. How many of us popped one too many Midol in high school just to get through the day as we were literally bleeding through our pants? Anyone else? Just to get on with our life. We taught women in the West that the cycle is an inconvenience, not intelligence. So again, to your point, from the first moment that women cross into womanhood, they're taught, told, they learn that their body's a problem.
Well, and that women's bodies being a problem and women being a problem is a theme that is internalized across our culture on so many levels. Yeah. And I mean, I was that person. Like I came out of high school and yes, I also was a Midol person. And I will never forget the Midol commercial where they were like, oh, this woman like throws herself down on the couch and she goes to button her pants and her button isn't coming together. And then you hear like the voiceover, right, that says something to the effect of, are you bloated, have cramps, blah, 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 take Midol and get back into your life. And you see the woman spring back into her life, right? And they do this with like Kotex. They do this with, because like they have the sport tampons, right? And they make it look like playing tennis on the heaviest day of your bleed is a joyful thing to do.
Absolutely not.
I'm like, this has to have been a dude that created this commercial.
Seriously.
It's insane. So not to like name drop, but these brands, okay, collectively have been showing us what it means and socializing us to what it means to be a woman, have a period, and what your life is supposed to look like. And if you have symptoms that are disrupting your ability to be a human robot and continue on through the day, not like you have changes in your emotions, your energy, and everything else, use this product. Okay, so all of a sudden, this rite of passage becomes something that gets monetized. And then this becomes a theme through the entire rest of a woman's life, from the pink tax on products that are not black or blue to there are hygiene taxes for period products. There are countries around the world that are like boasting, oh, we just got rid of our period tax, but this is a collective problem. Like we get penalized and taxed for the things that we need for basic hygiene. And then we're told that we're dirty if we need to use them. It's horrible. No wonder we feel awful about ourselves.
And for context, too, I think it's very important for every woman listening to this episode. Your uterus goes from roughly 4 ounces to 8 ounces while you're bleeding. You go from a half cup to a cup. Think about that. It sounds really small and insignificant, but let's put it into further context. After ovulation, your temperature rises 0.5 to a degree in order to potentially maintain viability of a pregnancy. Now, 0.5 to a degree feels insignificant when you look at like 0.5 on paper to 1. But to your body, that is a massive shift. 4 ounces to 8 ounces, I would say that's statistically more significant than the 0.5 to 1 degree shift you get post-ovulation. And on top of that, your uterus sits at the very bottom of a trunk where you've got your large intestine, your small intestine, your stomach, your kidneys, your liver, your adrenals, your bladder, your spleen. It's literally sitting at the bottom of all of this. Everything sits on top of one another. And when one organ system becomes inflamed, swollen, it's like a cobweb, sticky organs. Everything becomes sticky with one another. So of course your digestion goes out the window, whether it's hypermotility, which is a whole conversation about prostaglandins and hormone shifts, etc., or it's hypomotility, whether it's excess hunger or depleted hunger, like, of course, everything is going to be impacted. Oh, and then brain function, like it's day 3. Day 3 is when we start to come back online. Of course, you're not nailing it at work. You're fucking tired.
Right. And that's the thing, like your body's doing this huge process. And historically, we used to recognize this. This is why red tents existed.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful ritual. I mean, sometimes there was ceremony held in red tents. Sometimes it was just whoever was bleeding was able to rest and in some cultures commune with ancestors because the veil was thinner. And there was this reverence for the energy of that time. And the full moon bleeders took care of the new moon bleeders and vice versa. So like in that community setting, women were still taking care of one another in this rhythm as well. So there was an understanding that you had to stay warm and you had to rest and you weren't firing on all 8 cylinders and you weren't expecting to be nailing it every single day. So now let's lay in on top of it the fact that Western culture expects you to live in spring and summer energy all the time. Generate, create, generate, create.
Be productive.
Well, look outside the window. Nature doesn't even do that.
Florida needs to get the fucking memo. Okay. We're getting it. Tuesday, we're going to 30. I'm here for it.
So I live in New England, so I feel like I have a very distinct like set of 4 seasons. And it's honestly in the wintertime when it's cold and that makes me grouse. That's what keeps me here is the distinction of those seasons up here. But I mean, we still have that energy, right? Like there's still fruiting and flowering and a decay, and then the cycle starts again, regardless of where you are. And we have those seasons outside the window. We have those seasons in our body. We have those seasons in our life and in our life cycles, in our businesses. This is how nature works. And when we're on our bleed, we're not going to be nailing it, and that is okay.
It's normal. Can we normalize that, please? Like, it's completely and utterly normal. And as we're talking about rite of passages, this bleed precurses and I would say activates the sexual awakening, which is the rise of desire. All these rites of passage literally go in somewhat of a linear fashion. So you have your first bleed, and then you step into the rise of desire. And this is where we can fold in priestess culture, which I love. So in priestess culture, female sexuality was a source of divine power. Tantra, Taoism, Egyptian and Mesopotamia temples. Man, we are pre-period, we can tell. Women, it's like the marbles in the mouth. You're like, come on, word it. Women were taught to desire the sacred, right? They were taught that pleasure is a portal, and not in the disgusting way that we see it portrayed today. I think that would be a really fun conversation to have. Like, I'm all for women masturbating and pleasuring themselves, but this culture that we have on Instagram where we've distilled and diluted something that is so beautiful and such like a connection to pieces and parts of ourselves that exist in the unseen realms makes me want to vomit. Obviously, there's that sexual energy or that sensual energy that was directly connected to the creativity and intuition. But in the West, we turn female desire into risk. We've called it dangerous. We've called it rebellion. We've called it promiscuous. I love that one. Be careful what you wear. We've invented the word hysteria to describe women who express emotion or sexuality, and we've treated them with forced orgasms and institutionalization. We have put our daughters on birth control. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people, but we're putting them on birth control before they even understand what their body is saying. It takes your cycle, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always been taught that it takes your cycle roughly 12 years to mature with you and your hormones to do the same.
So women's bodies move in 7-year cycles, men's bodies move in 8-year cycles. So like Chinese medicine does not recognize that the woman's adult body is fully mature in all of its energetic and physiological functions until 21.
Yep.
So that totally correlates with what you're talking about. And then I also will tell parents that are like, well, I don't want my kid to get pregnant, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I get it. Let's teach your child about how their body works, but their body is practicing in like the first 5 years. They won't ovulate regularly, they won't cycle regularly, or they'll cycle regularly for a little bit and then they'll miss one or it'll be delayed or something. And it's because the body's trying to figure out this hormonal game of telephone between your hypothalamus, pituitary, and ovarian axis.
Yep.
We're in that axis. So that game of telephone is like trying to straighten itself out. So when we introduce birth control, when we introduce these kinds of interventions and whatnot, it is hard for the body to figure out establishing a baseline of what it is it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now I say that, and it doesn't mean if you've done that, I'm a byproduct of that. I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I had period problems from go. The doctor told my mom the only way to quote unquote fix it was to go on birth control. And we just did what we had for information, right? Like, we didn't know any different. And so during my practice years, my body was on birth control as a means of trying to quote unquote regulate, and birth control doesn't regulate anything, folks. And I'm going to say that's a hill I'm going to die on.
Yep.
It does not regulate anything. You do not have a period on birth control. Holy shit. But this is the vocabulary that even doctors use with people.
With zero informed consent.
Yeah. Yeah. And so knowing what it is that it's actually doing in your body is really important. But when we're looking at hormones coming online, your body has this like practice time. But then once that communication loop happens appropriately, then you're on this evolution of moving into what your adult energy is going to be. So that's why Chinese medicine recognizes that like between 7 and 14, your body is getting ready to have a period. We're shooting for a 12 to 14-ish start. But as long as you started the period by 16, you're good. Earlier than that tells a story of where your body is asking for more support. After that, it tells a story of where your body is asking for more support. So 12 to 14 is kind of the target range. If you want more info on this, go to my website. I have blogs about this, or if you want to follow me on Substack, I just had one come out about it because I do get a lot of questions about. So my daughter has breast buds and hair. Does that mean the period's coming soon? No, it absolutely does not. You still have years to go yet. And if it comes earlier than that, reach out to me. So we want this to be socialized as an empowering moment for a young woman, that they are stepping across the threshold into this new period of their life. There are new pieces of information and responsibility and power that comes with this stage of life, right? And that can be a really beautiful thing. But unfortunately, it's all the rest of the rites of passage in a woman's life has become so medicalized that, oh, you have a period problem, here, take a pill.
Can we also normalize, I know this is probably going to ruffle some feathers, sexuality? You're literally in your prime.
Yeah.
Literally, when you look at a period coming on and the maturation of a cycle, it's normal to be attracted to other people. It's normal to get curious about sexual activity. It's normal to want to explore. It's just about creating the container and the boundaries to do that all safely.
Yes. And that's it too, is like there's a huge amount of disempowerment around women's sexuality. And we could do that in an entire episode just on its own.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at young people, being able to have conversations that aren't shaming, because that's our baseline, right? Like just think about the conversation we were having about the pad up the sleeve. I pad up the sleeve that shit right up until I started doing this work. I would be in a place of business when I was in a W-2 job for somebody else. I would stick it in a pocket, up a sleeve. I remember when I was a young girl, at that first summer afterwards, and I was like, oh shit, I don't have a sleeve. Where do I put this thing? I don't know what to do with this. And it was like this whole stressful moment, like at my locker going, I don't have any sleeves to stick it up. What do I do?
Right. Because look, we shut things down until they explode or disappear, right? And being good and being safe and being quiet, that's a lie that we have all swallowed associated with all of this, right? We live in a culture that has continued to encourage women, don't care what anyone says, I feel like we can observe this routinely, to be so small that they're not seen.
Yes.
Be thinner, right? Work out more, eat less, don't talk about your period, be quiet, quell your emotions.
But you're supposed to be a tigress in the bedroom.
Yeah. Talk about a contradiction right there. Like, how is this girl that is literally this woman that's invisible to the world going to dominate you in the bedroom?
Because we don't have those conversations. Like I look at like the priestesses that served in Isis's temple, like there was this huge understanding that not only was this power sacred, the power of pleasure and sexuality and sensuality sacred, but it was a critical part of communing with the divine. And to have taken it from such a high position of reverence to, you know, the trash that we see in pornography that isn't even real, and an entire generation of young men who have a really distorted understanding of what it means to have healthy, intimate relationships as a result of this through the lens of a man's eye kind of distortion. Like we've created this really unhealthy relationship. So as we're coming through this developmental stage, women are getting very unhealthy and mixed messages about what it means to be a woman.
Well, we've marketed, again, we've capitalized on the period. Now we've capitalized on the sexuality of women, right? And that display of it is only reserved for certain industries and certain environments, right? And this is what precurses and prepares us to go to motherhood, or birth, I should say, birth and then motherhood, which is the third rite of passage, which is also capitalized upon.
Yes. So I see so much period disharmony and dysfunction because of this stage that we have set in the beginning of what it means to be a woman, right? So then when we get to the point in our life where we're supposed to have babies, there are 1,001 ways that our capitalist society monetizes this. You see it through the fertility monitors. You see it in interventions. Like, we've put all of these people on birth control, then there is no support in terms of how to come off the birth control. I remember that I had a doctor go, and it wasn't to me, it was to the person that I was accompanying to the appointment. And they said to this person, this was younger in my life, I wasn't a practitioner yet. And they said to this woman, oh, just go off your pill packet. Once you have your bleed, just don't take the next pill packet and you can try. And are there women that get pregnant in the first go round? Sure. It shows that your birth control packet really wasn't working and you were probably part of the 20% that didn't fall into the 80% that was actually being protected by it. So yes, you can get pregnant on birth control. Hey guys, guess what? Like, it's only 83% effective when used correctly. So it's not even like a foolproof plan. But so yes, are there some people who can get pregnant right after they go off it? Sure. But the vast majority of people, the answer to that is no.
And there's a statistic. I would have to find the trial that I read this on. It takes up to 10 years to detox your body off of birth control. 10 years. So you have 10 to 12 years of maturation of your cycle. Most of the time it's interrupted for women. Then you have up to 10 years of detoxification from the element that was utilized to quote unquote regulate your what was made to be problematic cycle. And we're telling women that they shouldn't express and explore or be curious about what becomes very second nature, especially in this chapter of life, their sensuality and their sexuality. Do we see how fucked this is yet? Are we knee deep in how fucked this story is? And then you get to birth, right? It's the primal portal. It was once wholly a woman surrounded by other women, moving with her body, not on a table, not in stirrups, right? Not laying on her back, in tune with the rhythm of life itself. In almost every traditional society, birth was a rite of passage, not a medical event. But in the West, we're so great at ruining things. Birth was obviously handed over to white coats and bright lights. Midwives were pushed out. You still, to this day, in certain states, cannot choose to have a VBAC legally based on state law. There are states that will say no because you had a prior cesarean section. Your OB, your midwife, your what have you, is not allowed to walk you through a vaginal delivery. There are some states where midwives can't work with you if you had a prior C-section, it's insane to me, right? But midwives were pushed out. Hospitals became standard. Pain was treated like pathology. We see that in multiple disease states, right? And women were told to lie back, stay still, and let the quote unquote experts take over. We medicalized birth. And in doing so, we robbed women of one of the most transformational events of power that they will ever experience.
I will never forget my mom talking about my grandmother's birth experience with my mother. During that time frame, there was a practice of making mom unconscious. Like, they would use gas and knock her out, and her body would birth. Because our bodies are fucking awesome, but you wouldn't remember the birth. And so my grandmother birthed my mom at the hospital, remembers birthing my mom, and then they knocked her out. So she missed like the first little piece of that connection point with my mom.
So important. That's when you get all of the hormones. That's where this is also why, side note, C-sections can be really problematic, especially if you've not gone into labor. So we need labor to elicit a cascade of hormones that allow us to connect with our baby, to bond with our baby, to initiate breastfeeding. And when you don't go into labor, I can only speak from this through a personal lens. My baby was premature and it was an emergency C-section. There are many moments in my life where I've stopped and gone, I got stiff. Like I was stiffed from an experience. I don't know what it's like to go into labor. There are moments where I'm like, that really upsets me. I don't know what it's like to labor, but I have a kid that's here. It's a very weird place to be when I get stuck in those places, but it was such a journey to breastfeed, and it was such a journey to bond, because typically with cesarean sections, one, they don't give you the baby immediately. They take the baby off to the side and start doing what they need to do. There's no skin to skin. And two, if you've not been in labor yet, your body is not engaging in that hormonal transaction. So elective C-sections blow my fucking mind. Why? Why is that an option?
Well, and we do it more in the United States. Brazil has a really high cesarean rate as well, but like we have a really high cesarean rate. I actually have a colleague in the pelvic steaming side of the world that is teaching hospitals in her home country because they have socialized healthcare and they don't want to be doing as many cesareans because it costs more money for their government.
Absolutely.
And so she is going around and teaching how you can use pelvic steaming to reduce the intervention level or need, because a lot of times those kinds of birth experiences are, and I'm not saying in all cases that this is the case, but in a lot of cases, it's because they're on a timeline and they want to push you through as fast as possible. So if your body doesn't respond to their timeline, then you're like, you know, oh, well, you've been laboring for a certain number of hours. If you still have your waters and your amniotic fluid and whatnot, yes, there is a point where you get tired and whatnot. And I'm not saying that intervention couldn't potentially be beneficial, but in general, 97% of birthing could happen without a high level of intervention. And for the 3% that require it, like my best friend who was a type 1 diabetic, and she had 2 babies and both of them had to be delivered cesarean section because she was a type 1 diabetic, but she has 2 beautiful, healthy children as a result of that. Like, yes, there's absolutely like a place and a time.
Instances.
Correct. But like overall, collectively, we have taken childbirth and made women feel like their bodies are not enough and they can't do this thing, like they're broken. Like in the West, I read this really great book. It's called The Wild SOAS, and it talks about a biointelligent versus a biomechanistic way of looking at the body. And our current way of looking at birth and birthing bodies and even the conception process is that the doctor needs to go in like a mechanic and fix things that are wrong in order for the body to do something.
Can I interrupt you for 1 minute? I'm sorry. There is nothing ever wrong with your body.
Yep.
Ever. Period. End of report. The symptom is not wrong. The pain is not wrong. The irregularity is not wrong. Take the empathy out of it. You are so emotionally attached. We get so emotionally attached to the symptom and making meaning of the symptom and then deriving that there's something wrong with you or the way that you're living. And that's why the symptom's here, as if it's a personal fucking thing. It's not wrong. It's feedback. Right? What the doctor often does is they shut the feedback up, they silence the symptom, they override it. And yeah, you might get the baby, you might get the pregnancy, you might get the regularity temporarily, but eventually you're going to end up with another problem.
Yes. I feel like we could just stop the entire episode right there because that is the root of this problem.
There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. We need fucking t-shirts. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yes.
It's all data. I have this beautiful mentor and she has this phrase that she uses. Everything in the field runs off of democracy. And everything wants to be seen. So if it's coming to the surface, it wants to be seen. And who are you to silence it? It's like putting it back in line. Oh, you be quiet. You go to the back of the line. Well, eventually that thing is going to be at the front of the line again. And it's going to be louder because now you've minimized it. You've silenced it. You've pushed it aside so many times that it has to scream to get your attention.
Yes. I see this with cycle stuff all the time. And people are like, oh, well, can you fix this thing right now?
Not because broken. The language. Oh,
yeah, well, but that's exactly how they word it when they come in. So we've talked about how like birthing bodies lose their autonomy. So now let's fast forward to perimenopause. And this is one of my
motherhood.
favorites.
So can we hit motherhood really quickly? I feel like birthing and motherhood go together, right? But we go from village to isolation. Yes. Cultures all over the world once honored new mothers. There was a food train. There was 40 days of rest. There was massage. There was acupuncture. I mean, there was community. For the first 40 days in Ayurveda, like, I don't know how to pronounce it in Latin America, but it's like my son would annihilate me. He's learning Spanish and he's doing so well. Maybe you can correct this. It's La Cuarentena. Is that correct? Similar to the first 40 days in Ayurvedic medicine, this is what they practice in Latin America, right? Women are held in like this sacred cocoon. But in the Western world, we all hold the baby and we drop mom as soon as the baby gets here, right? So we're handed a baby that's swaddled and a return to work date.
Yes. Yes.
No ritual, no reverence, no real support. And then when the mom breaks underneath the weight of it all, okay, we call it postpartum depression. And we give her pills instead of people.
Yeah. And she needs people.
This is a cultural failure.
Yes, completely. I mean, in some cultures, the mother will move back in with their mom or their mom will move in with them for a time frame in order to support mom and support baby. So giving mom the opportunity, there's a really beautiful steaming tradition in Mexico. So pelvic steaming universally is used for postpartum recovery, but this is like actual like steam for the body. It's like and then they wrap the body really tightly, and it reminds me a lot of the closing of the bones and I had one of those ceremonies done when I had Enzo, and it was the thing I never knew I needed. Going through the birth portal threw me energetically out of my body a little bit, and I felt like I was flopping around on the floor, but I wasn't moving apparently because it was like reintegrating my body after I had this huge birth experience. And it was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to the amazing women who made that little ceremony happen for me. But I didn't have that the first time. So I've had 2 births now, one in that completely unsupported model and one where I had a small village that helped to take care of me. And I don't know how we're doing it. There's a reason that we then end up with cycle problems afterwards or secondary infertility challenges afterwards. Like we're just not holding mom and supporting mom.
No.
And we're not nourishing mom. So it's the shower is for the baby. Well, I wanted to have a blessing way.
Yes.
Because I wanted to be held this time. And there's nothing selfish about that. Like you are doing the biggest thing your body will ever do, bringing life into the world. You pull from every energetic and physical asset that you have to create human life.
Women still die in childbirth. Let me just put that into perspective.
Yeah. I mean, this is the biggest fucking thing your body will ever do. And then on the other side of it, you've got people asking for transcripts and you've got to go back to work and you've got to do this and what about that and all this stuff afterwards. And it's holy crap.
Well, no wonder the birth rate is declining faster than a cart moving downhill with wings, because I think women are going, I know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no paid maternity leave to speak of unless you are graced for working with a company that seems to have it together. But there is no paid leave in the United States. We are the only industrialized country that doesn't.
Not to mention the cost of raising a child at this point, right? Like I was doing some messy math with my kid up to this point, and it was just for basic necessities. And I think for basic necessities like clothing, food, medical care, child care, right? Basic necessities up through the age of 18, it was $1 million. It was $1 million. And that's not like the extracurriculars. That's not the summer camp. That's not the little things that pop up here and there. So in a world that's constantly screaming progress, go faster, do more. Oh, and we need you to birth a baby, but the cost of living is so exponentially inflated while pay stays where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like, of course, people may dream to have a baby and want to have a baby, but it's not actually feasible for some people, a lot of people at this point.
It is. It's hard. And I mean, as a business owner, like I felt like I disappeared for a whole year. And it wasn't because I was stepping out of my business. It's just I didn't physically have the resources on board to work at the same level that I was working at before. And there was zero compassion for that.
And neither do women going into perimenopause. Okay.
Yep.
So women going into perimenopause, this is what I like to call the forgotten crown. Maybe there's another beautiful way to describe it, but this is really the last rite of passage. I don't know about you. I expressed this in a voice memo. I am so going to mourn my last period. I won't know that it's come.
Yes.
Or that it's gone.
Yes.
But I think when that reality sets in,
I have a mixed relationship with it, and not for any like dysfunction or like, oh, I'm so glad this is going to be over. It's not that. There is a reset and an energetic release that happens with it every month. That part, I think I'm going to have a hard time letting go of, because it does make me feel like level set and clean, open. There's this aspect to the release side of it that just feels good every month. But I am looking forward to those wisdom years of my life and not having the changes in my hormones calling the energy shots, that I can show up in more of my own rhythm rather than my hormones calling the rhythm. So like I have this weird relationship with it. I think honestly, I'm going to have a harder time with knowing that I no longer have the ability to make the choice around having children.
Yeah.
I think whether I choose to exercise it or not, it's the choice, right? Yeah. And then when my body can't do that thing anymore, the choice has been made for me.
I actually think this is so beautiful, because for me, I'm sure both perspectives are going to resonate with different people. But for me, the choice has been made. I will not be having any more children. That's where we've landed, right? For me, it's like I finally feel like I have the space in the room to get to know my period and cultivate a relationship with her. And that's just been abbreviated.
I mean, I feel like I have that relationship with my cycle. My journey to conceiving my son was a longer one for a lot of reasons. There was life stuff as well as physical stuff that was part of that journey. And it shaped me as a practitioner, shaped me as a person. But like my husband and I had always kind of envisioned that we would have two.
Yeah.
And so having the one that we wanted so late in life, where now I find myself asking the question quite often, how is this going to affect my perimenopause if I do this again? Because I am in my 40s now. And it's not that I can't. I mean, in no way at this point do I feel like there is a age restriction on it. It's more, how many years do I have between this point in space and my non-bleeding years?
To rebuild.
That's it. Because it takes 18 to 24 months minimum. And if you look at it from other lenses, they would say closer to 4 years to really be replenished and rebuilt after you have a baby.
And indigenous tribes, indigenous circles did not allow women to have another baby prior to the 3-year mark because they understood this principle.
But that's it. Like, we rush. We think we have a biological clock we need to race against. And that's a whole thing. Again, part of the medical model.
Yep.
Right? Where we're told our bodies are like, there's an expiration date. Well, really, the only quote unquote expiration date is when you're no longer cycling. If you aren't ovulating, you don't have an egg to fertilize.
Right.
Well, that doesn't happen though until much, much later in your life. And even then, there's a reason meno babies exist because mom didn't know she was ovulating.
Yes.
So your body doesn't have this, I am 35, my eggs, poof, mysteriously have expired.
Again, that's rooted in a Christian perspective based on baptism rates many centuries ago. This geriatric pregnancy benchmark doesn't actually exist for any clinical reason. Maybe today it's becoming more relevant because we are seeing perimenopause slide back, right? And we are seeing perimenopausal symptoms slide forward in terms of presentation, but that's got way more to do with how we're living.
Well, and I think that, yes, how we're living is a huge part of it. And that was actually what I was going to say about egg quality. As if you're putting the right things in your diet and you are mindful of how you're moving through the world and managing your stress and honoring your body's rhythms and cycles, living in alignment with nature. What? So like, if you do that, it's not going to be the experience or the uphill battle that they make it seem like it's going to be to try to conceive after 35.
No.
So then fast forward to perimenopause, and that was kind of what I was starting to like dovetail, is like where you see that gaslighting, it's kind of the same in the trying to conceive as well as the perimenopausal side of things, because you go into your doctor and you go, is this normal? Am I supposed to be feeling this way? And sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, you're just perimenopausal, and they won't even run tests. Like, okay, just because somebody is 40 does not mean that they are in perimenopause. Your hormones do specific things. Their reference ranges change. So now we're at the, how do we medicalize perimenopause, SSRIs and other anxiety depression medication, and birth control I've seen, hysterectomies I've seen, and HRT, hormone replacement therapy, tends to be the biggest buzz phrase these days.
Perimenopause is not a breakdown. It's a spiritual reorganization. It's the call of your wise woman. It's your body saying, we've spent decades outperforming, overgiving, and people pleasing, and now it's time to come home. It's a call home. And to your point, we medicate our way out of the message that we're receiving. And I think it's important to say this. Neither Adrienne nor myself are anti-hormone replacement therapy, okay? I think in certain instances, like the C-section.
That's it. It's certain instances.
Right. That hormone replacement therapy has a place. It could be supportive. It could be stabilizing. It could even be life-changing in certain instances. But it's being sold as a fix-all in a culture that refuses to address the real problem. Okay, most women are noticing perimenopause, or who are reaching perimenopause in the United States, are already crispy fried.
Yes.
Running on cortisol, having 20 tabs open in their brain, living in a permanent alpha state of stress where your body is there to perform, protect, and push through. And when you layer hormone replacement therapy on top of a nervous system that looks like it's already maxed out, you don't regulate, you amplify. So you might feel better for a little bit, just a little bit, right? But you crash harder.
So I had a woman come up to me at a festival this past fall, and she said, I'm in perimenopause. I've been having a lot of emotional stuff. And she goes, do you work with that? I said, yeah, absolutely. So then she goes, so let me ask you this question. She goes, I was put on hormone replacement therapy. And I said, okay. I was kind of not shocked. And she goes, is it normal for a period to come back? And I was like, yes, because essentially you're replacing the hormone that was supposed to be decreasing towards the cessation, the ending of your bleeding years. You've put it back into the equation. And of course, you're going to have a period. She goes, oh my God. She goes, I was almost done. And I was like, yeah, you probably were. She goes, but just this is what they told me would make me feel better. She goes, I have less of the emotional stuff. That's what she said. She goes, I had less of the emotional stuff. She goes, but my period came back. And I was like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So when
we're not supposed to avoid the emotion either.
No, because it's telling you something. Yes. Like your body has an incredibly sophisticated language that it tries to communicate with you in.
All the time. When people are like, oh, I want data. You got data points. You got 1,000 of them a day. You don't need to go to the doctor. You don't need to run a lab. You literally need to take notes.
Yes. And listen to what the body is telling you. And this is where I feel like my role as a practitioner is sometimes people don't know how to decode what it is that
is beautiful.
And that's exactly what I'm here for. Let me help you translate what your body is saying to you. And this is what I do as a psychoalchemist is I'm looking at the season of your life, where you are in your cycle, and I'm helping give you information like, is this showing up the way that it's supposed to at this point in your life, in this point in the month, in this point in the season, because like the season outside the window does affect the way that your body shows up. So I help to translate that. And when people run it through a filter like that, they go, oh, because we have this understanding that our bodies are something to be fixed and they betray us.
You ain't a fucking car.
No. You don't have parts that go bad that you have to take out. This is
sometimes that's a whole nother conversation. We don't have optional organs. Please stop letting them cut you open.
I was gonna say I see a lot of gallbladders in women, and I see a lot of hysterectomies in women, and there's a reason for that. Right? Chinese medicine understands that liver and gallbladder live in the same household in the element of wood, and they are there to provide checks and balances for one another. And if the liver is overpowering, you get certain symptoms. Indecisiveness can come from the gallbladder. So they're husband and wife, right? And just like any husband and wife, there needs to be appropriate communication happening between the two. And if there isn't, symptoms arise. So I see a lot of women who are like, oh, I had my gallbladder out. I was like, no wonder your neck and shoulders are tight and you clench your jaws.
And you get headaches because you're stagnated. Those are the worst.
So our body tells us a story about the internal climate of what is happening inside. And I feel like my whole job is to empower people to understand what that's saying. And in perimenopause, your body loses the veil of estrogen that keeps everything soft and keeps you a little more of a people pleaser. And soft can be your skin, soft can be your emotional expression, all of these things. It softens the edges of things. And then that veil drops and you have tons of estrogen receptors in your brain, right? So your brain neurochemically is starting to behave differently because your hormone profile is changing. So your brain literally is rewiring itself. You're getting a massive fucking upgrade. But when you've got kids coming over the bow at you and aging parents and a mortgage and a business and a partridge in a pear tree and a boss that doesn't appreciate what you're doing or whatever, you've got all kinds of stress on top of the fact that you're having this neurological rewiring that's happening. Of course, you're going to have emotional symptoms. Same thing with the physical symptoms. Your body goes, girl, you've pushed me to the back of the line and pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. I cannot, because you no longer have the estrogen softening filter. I cannot. I refuse. Bitch, sit down and listen to me. I don't feel good. Shut up and listen. Yeah. And so she will scream at you. She will scream at you with irregular cycles, with pain in your cycles, with clots that you didn't even know could exist that big, with fatigue that is off the charts, with bleeding between cycles, with periods that don't totally turn off and you bleed for 3 weeks. Like, people, this is your body saying, Houston, we have a problem.
And oftentimes our cycle, our endocrine system reflects our relationships. So all the relationships that you just mentioned, chaos is mirrored in the body. The body is just a canvas where we can do the mind's work, the emotions work. It's really no more complex than that. We've now talked about 5 rites of passage. So let's go over them really quick. We have obviously the period, your first rite of passage. We've got sexual desire, the second rite of passage. We've got birth, the third rite of passage. We've got motherhood, the fourth rite of passage. And then we've got perimenopause, which will eventually lend itself to menopause, which is the fifth rite of passage. So I think the only reflection that I would leave for you is what sacred part of you has been pathologized that is actually your power.
Oh, I think that's a good place to leave it right there. I think that is worth really sitting with. And if you want to journal with it, because the places that we give our power away, our power leaks, are often the things that start showing up later. And if they haven't shown up before perimenopause, they absolutely will during, because the body goes, I've reached a breaking point. And you are a powerful creature, creatrix. You can create life. You can create your life. This relationship between your heart and your womb space is an incredibly powerful one. And when we listen to our intuition and our body's wisdom and that hell yes, fuck no that happens inside of us, and honor what it is that the body is actually asking for, even if it's inconvenient to other people. There are people that go through perimenopause and have virtually no symptoms. It's just like there are women that have periods that have virtually no symptoms, but they're living their life in alignment and in authenticity. And it's when we get out of right relationship with self that we have these symptoms and problems.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Body keeps the score.
Always. So I think it's important to remind you to stay wild, to stay wise, to stop apologizing for your power. And until next time, stay well.